but we
Like
can.
the county. and its
Correct,
corporate-
everyone has insurance requirements, bonds. We have living wage also for service contracts, but the county has that also, I believe. So other than that, we really don't have any stringent requirements for the vendor community.
So you're going to be coming back to us with recommendations on things that could be done.
I can perhaps, yes, look into some ideas, and I can work with some other departments also to see if we can maybe streamline some of the minimum requirements. What abilities do we have to create some flexibilities as far as perhaps project timelines, project scope, to perhaps open it up to more of a vendor community. We also do outreach events that we try to participate with the county, Miami-Dade College, to also engage businesses to come to the city of Miami Beach also.
I will say that I have noticed on a number of the contracts that have been coming to commission over the past year, I have noticed that there have been efficiencies. That, you know, you've brought us contracts, and it was one of the things that we spoke about when you first took the job, and I asked you, please find ways to bring us contracts that are more efficient on the taxpayers. And I have noticed that over the past year, you know, you perhaps have not gone with the incumbent vendor, and you may have gone with a new vendor, because a new vendor, you know, might be able to give us a lower cost on the taxpayer. So I have noticed the effort on your office
Thank
and on your behalf to bring us those contracts to the commission when we approve them, and so I'm grateful. And so if you could just identify what are the things that we can do policy-wise
Absolutely.
to further bring efficiency in these contracts on the taxpayers. And I think also the county, I think the Board of County Commissioners may have initiated a procurement task force where they're looking at their own procurement policies to see what they can do internally with their regulations to bring more cost-efficient contracts. Maybe we can see what they're doing.
Absolutely. I can look into what the county is doing also.
Okay, so I'll keep this on here and we'll talk about it again September 10th.
Sounds good, thank you.
Public safety. Any public comment?
No public comment at
Okay,
this
number
time.
26.
Item number 26 is discuss the beautification of sidewalks on Collins Avenue with mosaic designs, landscaping, and decorative lighting. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez, and Public Works will be presenting the item.
Hi, Brad King.
Good morning, good afternoon. Madam Chair. So with this item, you know, we did some significant research. We looked at, you know, uplighting and sidewalks and landscaping. But again, you know, with this item being on Collins, you know, obviously there has to be a lot of coordination with FDOT, and there's a significant you know, cost to go with it. So it's really, you know, at this point an item, you know, we were just looking for direction on them. You know, we've laid out all the cost estimates of everything, and I think it totaled approximately $3 million to go forward. And again, it would be in conjunction with FDOT because it is on
Would
Collins.
FDOT do any contributions?
You know, we haven't had those discussions with FDOT at this point.
Okay, I think this needs to stay here and discuss when Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez is back. So we'll move this to September. In the meantime, can somebody on your team reach out to FDOT and see if they would be interested in this? Because if they're not, then we really shouldn't be moving forward. But let's talk about it September 10.
Okay.
Okay, item number 17.
Item number 17 is discuss potential enforcement action that can be taken against contractors that improperly close lanes on roadways. This item was sponsored by Mayor Minor and co-sponsored by Commissioner Belt. Public Works will be presenting the item.
Okay, is there anybody from Mayor Minor's team that wants to tee this up, or just have Public Works? I see Danny. Hi,
Hello,
how you doing?
good, how are you?
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Danny Summer. I work for the Office of the Mayor. This item is about contractors that are on primarily Collins Avenue, but any road that the contractors will be taking up a lane but they do not have permits and they haven't notified the city. And the question is, what can the city do about it to get a notification and to perhaps fine them or have some consequence for their blocking lanes?
Thank you for the context. Brad King?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a lot of this is again, this is, typically like DOT type situations where they have contractors, working for them on different projects on their roadways. And, it's very hard for us at times to regulate, that because it's their roadway perhaps. But what we've tried to do, and our staff has reached out to FDOT, basically to have some discussions about these type activities, because there have been, more than one incident that's occurred at rush hour where it's kind of snarled traffic in, per se, Mid-Beach and, some other parts of the city, is that we're really trying to discuss projects with them. Obviously, if there's like something that like an emergency, I mean, that's really difficult, because if something happens and they have to come out and respond, and a lane perhaps gets shut down with that, that's very hard to be able to predict that. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that, the contractors that are working for them understand that, we have specific times that they can be out there, and they have to stop their work, basically at 3:30 to minimize the impacts of traffic during rush hour, so we don't have any of these, issues that have occurred before. So I know our staff has worked with them. We also do, we have a couple of right-of-way inspectors that are, trying to be more proactive at those times when you get to that 3:30 area on the main roadways, to make sure that, if FDOT is working out there, that they're packing up and they're, getting out of there.
So the mayor brought this forward because he wants enforcement action. So what is going,
Well, we from Public Works, we don't have that, ability. I mean, obviously.
So would it be
police
code and
could-
MVPD?
Could potentially issue citations. I don't want to speak for either of them on
Could
that.
we
what are
get-
the laws in place?
Could we get monthly updates on the citations being issued on this?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Major Javon Campbell, Miami Beach Police Department, under the leadership of Chief Jones. Just to let you know, we are proactively enforcing and addressing this issue. At least twice a week, we conduct formal details from out of our off-duty office, where they proactively go out there to go out to scenes and sites where there are lane closures to ensure that the people are adhering to the approved permit, that they have one, and that they are adhering to the stipulations.
To the schedule?
Yes. If they are not, then they're immediately shut down, and we request code to come issue the appropriate citations to them. In addition to that, because like I said, that's only a formal detail twice a week, at least twice a week, our regular patrol officers have been, basically asked to address any issues they come upon as well that they see as adversely impacting traffic, to ensure that the people are authorized to do the work outside of the rush hour times.
When we have these lane closures, they're usually required to have off-duty?
Not always. And then there are.
What are
a few
the
occasions-
circumstances under which they're required to have off-duty?
Well, they're required to have off-duty if they're going to close lanes, but what I should say, Commissioner, is that sometimes there are occasions where we're unable to fill the off-duty. So they're still able to continue with the work, even if we're not able to provide an off-duty officer at the time.
But aren't they required to bring in then someone from another jurisdiction?
No. No.
So they can close a lane of traffic without any law enforcement?
There are times there are occasions where that does happen.
And so my question would be this: if there's not a police officer that is available to fill that off-duty, can't we reject the permit? Because the thing is, the police officer is asked to be there as a matter of public safety. You're closing a lane of traffic, which is, in part, is a safety situation. You have traffic issues and coordination that goes into play. So the police officer is stationed there not just to have a police officer, but to address a safety situation. Is that correct?
You're 100% correct, Commissioner, and I would tell you that those incidents are far few in between. In fact, if we don't have a police officer from Miami Beach that is able to cover the detail, we do reach out to officers from outside agencies who we do have mutual aid with that can work off-duty jobs here. If we can't cover it there, we also offer it to our PSSs, our public service specialists. And then also we have traffic certified non-sworn personnel of our department as well as technically the fire department from our dispatchers who can work the off-duty. But there have been occasions where there hasn't been any coverage there at a road site.
Okay, and so when we have off-duty there, can those off-duty officers help enforce the schedule to make sure that, that they're not going beyond the schedule or the scope of what they have been approved for?
Absolutely, sir. That's what they're expected to do, 100%.
Okay. And I guess the issue is, in the instances where they don't get a right-of-way permit, and you have these contractors that are closing lanes without a permit, then I guess that's what the mayor is trying to address here.
I believe so.
And-
And that's what we address as well in our enforcement details.
Those details, when did those details start?
They happen twice a week, depending on the scheduling of the off-duty office team, what they may have. Like, for example, it's not two set days, same days every week. It could be Wednesday, Thursday this week. It could be Monday, Friday next week.
But how long have
But
they been going on for?
It's been, I don't know the exact amount of years, but I can tell you that I was assigned overseeing that unit back in 2022, and it was going on back then.
All right. Hernan?
So a couple of things through the chair. So in our Code of Laws and Ordinances, I think it's Section 82-151, all of these permits have to be reviewed by Public Works, Police, and the Fire Department. I think the discussion item talks about what action can be taken against contractors that improperly close these lanes of traffic. So after 3 violations, if a contractor improperly closes a lane of traffic, then the Public Works Director can deny that person a temporary permit for obstruction of the right-of-way for a 12-month period. For
And-
1 year.
And do
And then
we
our
have-
fine penalties are, for the first offense, $500, second offense, $1,000, third, $5,000, fourth is $10,000, and fifth, it becomes an arrestable offense, knowingly continuing to improperly block a lane of traffic.
Do we have that ability on FDOT roads?
But that's what I want to chime in and say. It's important to note, because when we're talking about FDOT roads, we do not have jurisdiction over lane closures on the state-owned or maintained roads by FDOT. We do not. You know,
So,
we can
but by
coordinate-
FDOT's, but let me ask you this, if FDOT has a contractor, and that contractor, if I'm FDOT and I'm hiring a contractor, I'm hiring that contractor to do all the legwork, to make sure that they are getting all the proper regulatory approvals to be able to do this work under the letter of the law. And if they're violating the schedules or not submitting the right applications and that type of stuff, and as Hernan is saying, after the 3rd violation, they can be rejected, you said, Hernan?
Correct. They can be denied a right-of-way permit for up
Denied.
to 1 year.
FDOT can still do the work, they just have to get another contractor to do it.
Right, but
We
they technically do not need a permit to shut down lanes on their roadway from the city. I think that's the important thing to understand. Like, we don't have that control over them because it's their roadway.
So their contractors can go to Alton Road, their contractors can go to 41st Street, to Collins Avenue, to Indian Creek, and close the road without going through the Public Works Department.
Unfortunately, they can because it's their roadway.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea, for the committee, last year, we issued 196 violations for this, and this year, we're up to 91 violations, year to
And those
date,
violations are on city roads or state roads?
everywhere, even neighborhood streets.
So how are you handling those violations on FDOT roads?
If they're not required to have a permit, then we don't issue a violation.
Okay. All right, so when you're telling me that you issued these violations, I guess that's where again then? Because you're saying if, you're telling me you're issuing violations?
Yep.
Okay, Hernan, I need to understand. I lost you here in
All right,
this.
so I mentioned even neighborhood streets. So yesterday, we came across a boom truck at an apartment building blocking a lane of traffic with no right-of-way permit.
Okay,
That's a violation.
all right. Which is great, that we're doing that on the neighborhood streets. On the state roads is where we don't have jurisdiction. So you're not issuing those violations on Alton Road, 41st Street, Collins Avenue, Indian Creek, you're not issuing those
Correct.
violations? Okay. Which is, that's a concern of what is causing the major traffic problems are these closures during periods of high congestion on these major thoroughfares. So
Yeah.
what are our alternatives? How can we better address this?
I asked our right-of-way manager, Alex Alvarez, to come down here and just comment on that, because he works very closely, with FDOT on these type of matters, and I can let him address that particular point for you.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Can you repeat the question? Sorry. That was
Okay,
absent.
thank you, Alex, for being here. How are we addressing the issue, or how can we better address the issue of the closures on FDOT roads, on Alton Road, on Collins Avenue, and 41st Street, that are creating a problem
Right.
with traffic, and, they're not getting permits, clearly, they don't need to get permits. How can we better address this?
So are you specifically asking when they're an FDOT contractor working on behalf of FDOT or just any contractor? Because right now, what we have in place is the ordinances, there's no closures allowed outside of 10 to 3:30 PM, but that's for permits that are issued through Miami Beach. If it's a contractor for FDOT, we don't officially have, my understanding is that we don't have official jurisdiction over them, and they can work and do closures at their leisure.
So non-emergency lane closures on major roads are restricted to the hours of 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So
Yes.
if someone is not an FDOT contractor, they're allowed to do work between those hours, between 10 and 3.
10 and 3:30 PM with a Miami Beach Public Works right-of-way permit.
Okay. And then if they're an FDOT contractor, they're allowed to do work outside of those hours.
Outside of those hours, usually FDOT works with us, depending on the location, to see what's best with our traffic impact. They'll work with our transportation team, and then we'll come up with the best hours that meets our city standards with traffic impact, and then also meets their requirements for their project.
And and I know previously we had conversations with the previous Secretary of Transportation, previously
Yes.
with Secretary Miller, about these issues. Have we met with Secretary Iglesias, about these issues, to make sure that the new secretary, that there's continuity of, engaging in communication with the city, and trying to collaborate with the city when they have these projects?
Yes, we actually did meet a couple weeks ago, with a lot of members from FDOT and the new secretary, and we went over some of the city's expectations and how these are impacting our residents and the traffic. They're very aware. We're exchanging contact information, counterparts, so that any planned work we're made aware of. Obviously, emergencies happen. Similar to us, our structure, FDOT is a big structure. They have different divisions where it's maintenance, where it's operation, things like that. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's definitely something that's going towards the right path, and we're definitely having that communication back and forth more than we did in the past, so.
Okay, all right. It sounds like staff is doing everything that we can within our ability under what we have jurisdiction over.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Perhaps what can be done, maybe on a monthly basis, we can just get some sort of a report on the enforcement, because it's great that police is out there doing this enforcement. Perhaps we can just get a monthly report by LTC, maybe for the next 3 months, just to see how we're doing with the enforcement on this.
No problem, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll go on to number 25.
Item number 25 is consider beautification of the alleys behind Roasters and Toasters on Cafe Avante on the 41st Street corridor. This item is sponsored by Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez, and Public Works will be presenting the item.
Thank you,
Hi.
Madam Chair. This is an item, we've obviously been looking at, and Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez has been very actively involved in. But, one of the things that we've taken from this item and had some discussions with our colleagues in transportation is, these alleys back there, particularly the two that are in question, both are very heavily used service alleys. There's a lot of, activity going on in them. And in order to really try to determine the best course of the use of them going forward, whether to make them brick pavers, it made the most sense that we felt after discussions with transportation that we probably need to do a study to kind of see, with the complexities involved here, if that really makes sense just to make them brick pavers in the alley.
Does the study mean bringing outside people? Does that cost money, or a study internally?
It does.
Where you would evaluate?
We're recommending hiring a consultant
Okay.
between 60 and 100,000 to help evaluate that, because it's, if it was a simplistic thing, we would come right up here and tell you that, but there are some complexities involved in it, and, when you're turning alleys like that into potentially brick pavers, into these heavily used alleys, that have tremendous service and things going on there.
I'm just gonna put for the record,
That's okay.
I don't think this is where we need to be focusing at right now. I think, and this is a great idea, and I commend the sponsor for this. I've been hearing from businesses in the area. Actually, the businesses in the area, what they're asking for is that they want to have parklets on that 4,000 block, between 40th Street and 41st Street, on Chase Avenue, on Prairie Avenue, on Royal Palm, where Taste is, where Pita Loca is, on Chase Avenue. Currently, there's actually a city bike stand there. That's what they're more focused on, being able to have the expansion of their space onto the sidewalk. But given the amount of money and the projects we're going to be undertaking on 41st Street with the capital project, I think that's where we need to be focused on right now, and not as focused on the alleyway.
Understood.
Okay, here's what I'd like to do, because I don't want to keep it on committee and then have it not be heard until September. I'd like to send it to the full commission with no recommendation, and then the sponsor can decide what she'll do there.
Sure.
Okay, number 19, any public comment?
No public
Okay,
comment.
number
and
19.
Number 19 is discussion on reintroducing sailing-related events to Miami Beach. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Dominguez and co-sponsored by Commissioner Bell. Tourism and Culture will be presenting the item.
Well, I don't think it'll be necessary. I do want to continue this item. I had a meeting with Lisette and also with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. They went over all of the roadblocks that they've had in getting this done. I then took an alternate route, and I had a meeting with a yacht club and some outside people, and they are ready to move forward. So I'm really excited about a project that I have coming forward, but I'm not prepared to share it yet. So let's keep it till September, and in the meantime, you and I will talk so that I can tell you what my team and I have in mind.
Sounds good, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I want to commend you because we went through a lot of items. The one thing I'm going to just ask to our colleagues, a lot of times we refer items to committees, and we refer a lot of items to committees. It'd be helpful if the sponsor of the item, who is referring an item to committee, for them to be present when their item is being considered, because otherwise, we don't understand what they're thinking, we don't know what their goal is, And if they're sending an item to committee, they should be present to discuss and present their proposal at committee. Otherwise, this is how we end up, oftentimes with 30, 40 items on a committee agenda. It's easy to make the referrals, but then no one has the time to be present to present their referral. And so I would just kindly and respectfully ask our colleagues that they could be present to present their items.
Sounds fair. Okay, so with that, this concludes our Public Safety and Neighborhood Quality of Life Committee. Our next committee is scheduled for September the 10th. I wish everyone a safe and happy summer, and thank you to the city administration for all of the efforts that you do, and to my vice chair, really appreciate your input. Goodbye, everybody.